Iran's top diplomats have arrived in Geneva for a new round of indirect talks aimed at averting a war with the United States.
On the morning of August 15th in Eagle Pass, Texas, 3 unmanned drones armed with thermobaric warheads silently crossed the Mexican border and struck United States Army checkpoint number 4. This was no routine smuggling attempt, it was a deliberate act of war. But what happens when a cartel equipped like a battalion dares to confront the relentless power of the United States? A lightning-fast, razor-precise counterstrike reduced their ambitions to ashes in less than 3 hours. Comment number 1 and watch the video to uncover the untold story of the clash that reshaped border security, and don't miss the secret behind this overwhelming victory. At 3:12 a.m. on August 5th, beneath the dust-choked skies of southern Texas, 3 unidentified objects materialized at low altitude, gliding silently across the Rio Grande River. They were drones, each carrying a thermobaric warhead pre-programmed with the precise coordinates of checkpoint number 4 in Eagle Pass, one of the most volatile flashpoints in the 3-month U.S.-Mexico border crackdown. Just 14 seconds after being picked up by a civilian seismic sensor, 3 thunderous explosions ripped through the logistic zone, killing or wounding 11 U.S. soldiers. 17 others members of the Bravo 4 Special Forces team were trapped inside a command post, swallowed by fire and dust, completely severed from the regional command network. This strike was neither an isolated incident nor an intelligence lapse. For weeks beforehand, security agencies had been monitoring a series of unsettling signals. Human trafficking networks abruptly went silent. Fentanyl corridors that had flowed for years suddenly ran dry. And in Coahuila, just across the border, whispers spread that the CJNG was rearming after losing a critical transport route to the Mexican military right as the United States began deploying troops to the border to reinforce patrols and cripple narco logistics across the Laredo del Rio-McAllen Triangle. Cornered and watching its grip slip away, the CJNG chose to retaliate not with drugs, but with live fire. At 2:41 a.m. in Piedras Negras, 63 CJNG gunmen split into 3 units and moved through an abandoned tunnel network once used for human smuggling. They were equipped with M4 rifles, light machine guns, radio jammers, reconnaissance drones, suicide drones, and armored pickup trucks. Some wore soft body armor, others displayed counterfeit Mexican Federal Police insignia. Their objective was not smuggling. It was to assault a U.S. Army outpost, cripple the initial response, seize soldiers as hostages, and deliver a chilling message the CJNG could strike back. At 3:14 a.m., a reconnaissance aircraft operated by the CJNG detected a convoy of United States military supplies departing a temporary base in Carrizo Springs. One unit moved north, planting directional mines along the road leading to the checkpoint. A second unit sealed off the escape route with armored vehicles. A third advanced toward the command post where Bravo 4 remained trapped. Under cover of darkness, high-frequency communications were jammed. U.S. soldiers on the ground had no idea what was unfolding, but NORAD did. Seismic sensors disrupted electromagnetic signals and live imagery from an RQ-7B Shadow UAV urgently launched from Laughlin Air Force Base confirmed one thing: this was no minor border skirmish. It was a coordinated armed incursion masterminded by a cartel operating like a guerrilla battalion. At 3:14 a.m., the U.S. Southern Command Tactical Response Center issued a Level 1 emergency order, triggering the rapid deployment of 2,500 troops from the 3rd Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division, reinforced by support units from Fort Hood, Fort Bliss, and El Paso, as armored formations, armed UAVs, and attack helicopters surged into motion. At the same time, on the front line, 17 members of Bravo 4, including Captain Camilla Rhodes, were desperately holding a structure already tilted by artillery fire, with ammunition running critically low, 2 soldiers wounded and their remaining communication batteries nearing total failure. The enemy was closing in. Over the radio Rhodes transmitted her final encrypted message, "We will hold." What she didn't know was that 180 kilometers away, Stryker armored convoys were already on the move, helicopters were lifting into the night, and a Reaper drone armed with Hellfire missiles was locked in position awaiting authorization. In less than 3 hours, the United States would purge a cartel from its soil, not with negotiations, but with fire. This was no longer a war on drugs, it was a direct confrontation between a superpower and a criminal organization audacious enough to wage war like a nation. What followed would redefine border security in the modern age. Just 11 minutes after the initial strike, the U.S. Southern Command Operations Center at Fort Sam Houston snapped to full alert. Vast screens flared to life with cascading electronic data as seismic sensors ignited along the Rio Grande. Radio communications were jammed within a 15-kilometer radius of Eagle Pass, while shadow reconnaissance drones confirmed a heavily armed CJNG convoy advancing in tight military formation less than 6 kilometers from the border. This was no longer an incident, it was a deliberate assault on United States territory. Watching the feeds in silence, General Ethan P. Myers, commander of Border Defense Operations, gave a single nod and authorized an order drafted 3 weeks earlier, activate Gorgon Protocol. The Gorgon Protocol was a Level 1 tactical response plan designed for armed incursions by non-state actors along the border. At 3:31 a.m., Fort Hood transmitted deployment orders to the 3rd Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division. 1,100 soldiers were mobilized alongside 14 Stryker vehicles, 6 Cougar MRAPs, 4 HIMARS systems, and a mobile engineer team, all divided into northern approach routes. At the same moment, Fort Bliss activated 900 personnel from the 2nd Digital Warfare Battalion and associated electronic warfare units airlifted by C-130J aircraft. They carried no artillery, only radars, signal analyzers, and precision directional jammers. 270 kilometers away in El Paso, 400 Special Forces operators were placed on immediate standby awaiting the next command. Preparations were set in motion for aerial deployment by CH-47 Chinook and Black Hawk helicopters with a clear objective: rescue. Bravo 4 isolate the CJNG and dismantle its command structure. Soon the skies over southern Texas began to rumble as 6 AH-64E Apache Guardian attack helicopters lifted off from Laughlin Air Force Base, flying low in radar shadow along U.S. Highway 277. Each gunship was armed with 16 Hellfire missiles, a 30mm cannon, and real-time targeting data streamed from reconnaissance UAVs. On the ground, armored convoys peeled away from the main highway and advanced toward the objective in a wide fan formation split into 3 elements: Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Alpha pushed toward Carrizo Springs, securing the northern supply routes as the operation moved into its decisive phase. Bravo advanced directly northeast toward Piedras Negras, where CJNG signals were at their strongest, while Charlie, the main striking force, raced toward Eagle Pass at 90 kilometers per hour. Inside command bays, every machine gun radar array and UAV feed was locked to precise target coordinates, tracking every cartel movement in real time. The CJNG didn't realize it yet, but they were being methodically encircled. At 4:02 a.m., analysts at the Northern Digital Command Center detected a spoofed military radio transmission near the border. The CJNG was using advanced equipment to imitate U.S. military signals and mislead first response units. The deception lasted barely minutes. The 2nd Electronic Warfare Battalion deployed multi-layer signal decoders within 3 minutes, stripping away the false transmissions and exposing the cartel's true positions. All spoofed signals were isolated. a CJNG unit advancing toward a northern field hospital was detected and immediately tagged. Airstrike authorization was relayed to 2 Reaper drones orbiting overhead. At 4:09 a.m., an MQ-9 UAV released a Hellfire R-9X missile, a non-explosive weapon whose 6 steel blades deployed mid-air slicing cleanly through the cartel's command vehicle. The truck overturned, detonated on impact, and the surrounding command signals went dead. In less than 50 minutes, the CJNG's field command network was effectively blinded. Above the battlefield, the next threat emerged: homemade CJNG suicide drones flying low beneath radar coverage, each carrying thermobaric grenades. But this time, they were no longer facing a lone checkpoint. They ran headlong into the 30mm cannons of Apache gunship's multi-layer Patriot PAC-3 radar coverage and active electronic jamming projected by a distant EA-18G Growler. 6 drones were destroyed in just 90 seconds. The remaining operators attempted to retreat west, straight into a pre-designated kill zone where U.S. forces were already waiting. At that moment, a HIMARS crew at Fort McIntosh received the fire order. 3 launchers, each loaded with 6 GMLRs, precision-guided rockets, struck an isolated area near Laredo where the CJNG intended to regroup and rearm. A Cartel mobile radar briefly lit the spectrum for less than 4 minutes, then the entire zone vanished in fire. At 4:22 a.m., over a secure communications channel, the airstrike officer exhaled a single phrase: "Target eliminated." No response followed because none was needed. Inside the command bunker, everyone understood that Phase 2 was complete. The United States had not reacted. It had controlled deliberately, drawing the CJNG deep inside rather than stopping them at the border, and now the door was closing. At 4:36 a.m. on August 15th, under pale moonlight casting long shadows across the desert south of Laredo, the CJNG's armed convoy quietly entered Valamorta, a barren 7-square-kilometer valley once used as a Cold War oil and gas testing ground, now littered with rusted rigs and abandoned supply stations, exactly where the final act was meant to unfold. For the CJNG, it seemed like the perfect rally point, vast, sparsely populated, free of any permanent military presence, and positioned near U.S. Highway 83, the backbone of federal transport. What the cartel didn't know was that the valley had already been designated KZ-7A by U.S. Southern Command, a semi-natural kill zone, fully surveyed, mapped for wave reflection, and seeded with sensors 6 weeks earlier during a classified operation. Every entry point, dirt road cattle trail, and improvised pickup shortcut had been chipped and fed into HIMARS targeting systems. The CJNG wasn't advancing toward safety. They were walking directly into a tactical snare where the United States didn't need to defend, only wait for the precise moment to strike. Do you support this war? If yes, comment the number 2. If not, comment the number 5. At 4:42 a.m., the forward command base at Firebase Lima 112 confirmed that 13 armed vehicles had penetrated 2.1 kilometers into the kill zone. The CJNG advanced in disciplined pairs, 2 homemade armored vehicles in the lead, followed by 4 pickup trucks mounting heavy machine guns with a command vehicle and a jamming truck holding the center. High above, at an altitude of 4,500 meters, an MQ-9 Reaper circled in silence, streaming real-time telemetry to the command center as analysts calculated the strike window down to the second. "Wait 17 seconds, a young officer said calmly. "Let them cross point E7. The soil's softer there, better blast dispersion." General Ethan P. Myers nodded once. "Exactly 17 seconds, he replied. "Then wipe them out." Three HIMARS systems, positioned 19 kilometers away, fired in perfect unison. 18 GMLRS guided missiles armed with M3A1 fragmentation warheads roared skyward at Mach 2.5 before slamming into the heart of the CJNG formation with a target deviation of less than 1.5 meters. Within the next 4 seconds, Valamorta ignited like midday. The detonations unleashed crushing shockwaves, compressing the air forward at more than 300 psi, enough to shear pickup frames from 20 meters away. Lead vehicles were ripped apart, their chassis hurled end over end like crushed cans, while the command truck carrying encrypted radios took a direct hit, gouging a 1.2-meter deep fire pit and vaporizing every piece of electronics inside. Nearby investigators uncovered an encrypted document room containing operational files labeled Ojo de Acero, a coordinated campaign blueprint to seize control of 7 border crossings from Eagle Pass to Calexico within 2 years. The files included a chilling list of more than 40 military officers and political figures marked for neutralization. At 5:49 a.m., inside a concealed auxiliary bunker, Special Forces detained 9 individuals with no military insignia, later identified as senior CJNG commanders operating out of Coahuila and Nuevo Leon, effectively severing the cartel's remaining field leadership. Among them was Luis L. Quiman Reyes, a fugitive wanted by the United States Department of Justice for more than 300 enforced disappearances in Tamaulipas. He was captured in the act of attempting to destroy a portable hard drive as Special Forces closed in. Field operations soon confirmed the entire tunnel network had been secured. The final tally was decisive: 9 high-value prisoners taken, 6 armed gunmen neutralized, 3.7 tons of narcotics seized, and 5 United States soldiers rescued alive. Exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes after it began, the boldest armed incursion ever attempted by a Mexican cartel on U.S. soil was over not through negotiation but through speed fire and near absolute precision. But what truly sent a chill through the Pentagon wasn't the body count or the seized narcotics, it was the recovered documents. The CJNG was no longer operating like a criminal syndicate. It was attempting to evolve into a paramilitary force, and this confrontation might have been only the opening salvo. At 6:21 a.m. on August 5th, as first light washed over the scorched ground of Valamorta, the battle was over not after days, but in less than 3 hours. In that brief window, 2,500 United States soldiers had been deployed, 7 fire systems activated, 6 armed UAVs kept continuous watch. 3 CJNG field command posts were erased, and more than 50 gunmen were neutralized, marking a decisive and unsettling new chapter in border warfare. Nearly 4 tons of fentanyl were seized, and 9 high-value commanders were taken alive, including one of the DEA's most wanted. Yet for the Pentagon, victory was never measured in body counts or expended ammunition. The real alarm was that the United States had been attacked on its own soil, not by a hostile nation, but by the CJNG operating as a de facto army. America's response was calibrated to send a message beyond the battlefield, not only to the CJNG, but to the world. That same day, the National Security Council was convened and an executive order was signed formally designating the CJNG as a hostile non-state armed organization, HFNO. The battle at Eagle Pass delivered a stark lesson in the modern era. Border security is no longer just about intercepting smuggling routes, but about defending national sovereignty against highly sophisticated threats. The CJNG, equipped with drones, military-grade weapons, and coordinated army-like tactics, demonstrated how criminal organizations can evolve into paramilitary forces. The United States' swift, precise, and overwhelming response made one reality clear: readiness and strength are essential when confronting enemies without flags. The border is no longer a line on a map, it is the front line, and constant vigilance is no longer optional but mandatory. With 2,500 troops, overwhelming firepower, and razor-sharp strategy, the United States reduced the CJNG's ambitions to ashes in less than 3 hours, rescuing hostages, seizing tons of fentanyl, and exposing the far-reaching Ojo de Acero plot. The message was unmistakable. Even enemies without flags can be crushed when they dare challenge America. What do you think about this battle? Will cartels like the CJNG continue their reckless gambits, or does this mark the end of their ambitions? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next gripping stories about the threats still looming ahead.